Hello and welcome. And in this section, we're going to be looking at eDocs and supplier statements. So what is it? What is eDocs and supplier statements? This is the ability to import supplier statements and to use scraping. That's optional. We'll go through both, show you both options shortly, to match against AP invoices that you have in the system for a given supplier. So what are the benefits of using eDocs supplier statements? You've got that electronic copy of the statement. So it stays stored in Greentree against the supplier, so there's no need to print off. So again, you avoid the concept of something electronic arriving and then printing it off, losing pieces of paper, etc. You have the additional functionality of this reconciled. So therefore, no invoices, this is if you want to apply it, so no invoices can be paid until they are reconciled. This can be set at an individual supplier level, so it's not a global setting. And if you've viewed the eDocs supplier payment selections, you'll see where that reconciled comes in. If you are using scraping, then you can use the matching. So again, the statement that you've imported against the AP invoices and credit notes that are in Greentree, so this speeds up the process and reduces errors. And of course, with all the eDocs transactions, there's an audit trail of all the actions that have happened. So there are two options available. So there's simply importing the AP statement and then picking them off manually, so kind of more of a manual one. And there's the scraping and allowing you to do matching. So we're going to look at both of those. Okay, so the first option we're going to look at is simply where you are importing the supplier statements and you're going to code them directly. So in other words, there's no scraping involved. So I've placed a supplier statement. It's either come in from an email or I've put it on a file directory and it's been picked up from there. Here's my statement. This is the statement that's been come in again by email or a file network, and it just opens I've just opened the screen as such. So again, because there's no scraping involved, which I'll cover shortly, it doesn't know who the supplier is, any dates, any details, etc. that are on that statement. So what I'd need to do is look up who that statement is. Look up who that supplier is. So again, this is a standard Greentree, so I'm just going to look up. This is Freehills Toyota. Just to make life nice and easy, I'll just choose the last date of the month we're working on there. So the options are here: show outstanding transactions as at the statement date, and so transactions paid for the period. So you could tick both of those. I'm just going to go for this option here because I know that there's not many transactions in my system. Won't make any difference by selecting both of those. So I would then put in an amount that's on my statement there, which was 10,482.76. So again, there's no correct order to put these in, but you would naturally work down your header. Now, it's recognized all those transactions. It goes, okay, the amount that I have got out doesn't know about the transactions itself, but it knows that the amount that's there equals what I've put in there. So it's trying to do some of that work for me. At this point, I'm going to say no. Now, the reason I'm going to say no is because I want to go through the next step. But if I said yes, it would simply select all these transactions because it's worked out that the total of what's outstanding there equals the total of what I've put in. If I just say no, it's going to let me carry on. I'm just going to select those manually because what I just want to demonstrate here is that that's in green, meaning they match. So what we've talked about previously in the payment selections process is the concept of reconciling. So I can reconcile here. So by the purpose of reconciling, and it can be set at an individual supplier level, the purpose of reconciling is that then I can only pay through that eDocs payment selection process invoices that form part of that reconciliation. So they have been reconciled. So then what you do is you simply go reconcile, and it flags all those invoices being reconciled. Some other things going on here which you can do. Request copy invoice. So in other words, I've got the statement beside me here. I don't have an invoice that's there. No record of it. So I can just do this. I can go to Freehills Toyota. So it pulls that email address in from the supplier. I could add to it, put my own in as a CC or a blind copy, and I can write you'll notice here I can add attachments or remove attachments. So the attachment that actually is sitting here ready to go is actually a copy of the statement. So in other words, I'm emailing that PDF copy back to the supplier going, please send a copy of this invoice. Not like my bad example where there is no invoice 1, 2, 3, 4 on that statement, but hopefully highlighting that I've got this statement from you and I don't know what that invoice is. So that's a brief recap of bringing in a supplier statement with no scraping. So I'm just coding those statements or matching those up from what I've got there. So in the second option, I'm going to take an AP supplier payment. I'm going to bring it, and I want that statement to be scraped by extractor. So that's going to scrape the lines and the supplier and the details on that header information, such as the date, etc. And then I'm going to use the functionality within Greentree to attempt to match the lines that it can match, and I'll go through that in a second. So I'm going to use a different statement this time. So here's the statement I'm going to do. It's just one that I have obtained. That's it. I'm going to bring it in. So it's coming in again via an email network drive or a combination of both. It's brought it in, it's brought that statement in, scraped it. I'm not going to go through that process because we'll be watching it go through that process, but it's the same as all the other scraping that's happened. So a couple of things that have happened here. It's picked up the supplier. It's picked up a date. Now, of course, these details may or may not be correct in terms of that scraping that's gone through, or especially pertinent to the date. It hasn't picked up a total, so you have to see the other recording that talks about how to train to recognize these values. So I'm not going to cover that here, but I can still key that in. The date in this instance, what it's actually done is picked up the first date that it's found here. So I'm not going to go through the process at this point of retraining this document. That's covered in a separate session. I can still, of course, request copies that I mentioned in the first option. But what's now happened, I'll just bring that up and make it a bit larger there. It's brought up what it's found on this document here. So it's scraped that information and brought it in into Greentree. So you could say at a glance, this top section is my invoices that are in Greentree that I've entered in. This bottom section here is the invoices that the system has scraped off this image, off this statement. So in a perfect world and in theory, all these will match up because what they're telling me should be paid is what I've got sitting in my system, which I've received over a certain period of time. So what I can do, I'm going to use this auto match functionality. So I'm going to auto match, just going to click on that. What you'll notice there is that this is now highlighted blue, indicating that there are some matched items here. How many is yet to be determined, of course, but it's what it's done. It's put the 3 that it's found at the top here. So these are 3 that it's matched up. So come down here, and what I've done, kind of deliberately in this instance, but to show you what can happen, it's fully matched this first item. So the 504479, it's fully matched that and it's selected it. This one here, it's matched the reference, the value, and the type. So it's not a perfect match. So it hasn't, for example, matched the date. If I click on this one here, so it's that one the 4th, and that was the 2nd. So the dates don't match. But it's matched the reference, so the invoice number is still the same, the value is still the same, and the type being an AP invoice is the same. On this one here, it's matched the date, so it likes the date that I've matched up there. It hasn't matched by reference because if you'll notice that's 781, that's 780. But it has matched the value. So what you'll also see what's happened here, it's put the matched value in here of what I've calculated. So again, we want that to turn green. As such, yes, I cheated there quite deliberately, but if I put the value on, because there's some payments coming through on that, but if I put the value on here, that should be scraped through. Again, it doesn't match. So it's not going to let me proceed until that total agrees. So you can see from that one, with my AP statement, the next stage would be to continue. Once those are agreed and once the match value turns green, I can reconcile and carry on. But what I have done here, I've brought in my AP statement. It's been scraped. The system recognizes all these lines. I've done an auto match to pick up what's there. I can then filter between these if I want to see what's going on. I could be left with what my unmatched value is, therefore I can pick them off. So the idea is it's looking to auto match as much as it can. You then need to decide whether those are the probable matches, what it's done there is correct, and what I'm going to do with the unmatched lines, because then it's filtered them down and I can then pick them off, as the case may be, and then reconcile and continue. So I hope that's been a good overview of what the system does with scraping those supplier statements.